are stories that connect us to ourselves and each other. These stories reveal who we are and show us the many vivid, wild colors of our truth. Welcome to Soul Wanderings, where we raise spiritual awareness and foster connections through these shared stories and personal experiences. And now, exclusively on KGRA Radio, I give you your host for Soul Wanderings Radio. Here's AJ.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is Soul Wanderings, and I am AJ Rasmussen, your host. We are live on KGRADB.com, and if you would like to enjoy the show more so on video, I invite you to visit KGRADB Facebook and YouTube pages. There's a chat area on all of these platforms where you can participate in conversation with other listeners, and it's also a great place to ask questions for our guests. Listeners, tonight, tomorrow, whenever you are listening to this show, to this particular podcast, or show, radio show, whatever. Okay. When you are listening, what I'm doing here is I'm coming to a new place. Let me take a breath. Okay. I wanted to enter my heart space. I was overthinking. I'll just say that. So we'll go from there. I encourage you all to open your heart, expand your mind, and intently listen. Some of us go through some intense and unbelievable experiences, and whatever it is that we go through, whatever it is, okay? Sometimes some people believe in us and sometimes they don't. It doesn't make the experience any less real. Being compassionate towards other humans gives us both opportunity for healing in ways that are unimaginable. The energy literally transmute into positive on both ends of the experience. So whatever you are going through now, if you find it challenging, I encourage you to hang in there because it always works out in the end. And one of my favorite quotes, I say it a lot, if it hasn't worked out yet, it's not the end. My favorite way to experience everything in life, especially those challenging parts, is to find gratitude in the journey. Easier said than done, I know, no doubt. For me personally, though, when I have found gratitude, mountains have moved out of the way, or at the very least, they have become less big. They become a lot smaller, easier to climb. So finding gratitude in the moment, if that's challenging for you, feel in your heart who and what you are grateful for, then even more so, I encourage you to share that gratitude in whichever way you see fit. Like speak from it, learn from it, act from it, lean into it. Feel whatever happens next as your heart expands and those around you with whom you have shared with will, including yourself, will feel happier just from that simple act of gratitude that you've shared. Or watch the energy in the room. It changes. And a lot of times it changes your entire outlook and experience. So standing gratitude, it changes everything, which I'm going to do because at the beginning of the show, I was like, you know, I'm not going to lie. I'm really excited for tonight and I'm already getting tongue-tied, which is what I do. And to be authentic about it, that's exactly what's happening because I'm giddy. I'm excited. And with all of that being said, what I'm grateful for as I sit here in this space with you tonight is the opportunity I have to be here. I get so much appreciation out of all of you, my wanderers, and so much support and love from all of you, including the amazing crew of KGRA. I'm super blessed and just really happy to be a part of this amazing family. So There's my authentic self tonight. Thank you for allowing me to share. Tonight is going to be so exciting. I already said a lot of you are familiar with our guest. In fact, he was on the station last night with Universal Secrets, Kevin and Tiffany. Great interview. Go and check it out in the archives. This is not usually the type of guest that I have on the show, although we have had guests who have had experiences like this. But he's a fantastic guest for KGRA and the topics of which are discussed here on the regular. And I am so fascinated by his story. Tonight on the show, with his permission, we will be spending time with him in a soul wanderings fashion and talking about much more than just the experience, but rather his experiences, which he has had several, and diving deeper into the aftermath and life as he knew it in the moments and thereafter his experiences. So let's just get right to it. We have the honor of wandering with Terry Lovelace this evening. He has a long list of achievements and accomplishments, and he's been on so many places. I know you guys are very familiar with him. He's led a purpose-filled life and definitely continues to do so. He has a compelling story of missing time that includes proof of alien existence, alleged U.S. Air Force involvement, and an alien implant which was discovered accidentally through an X-ray. He's written details about all of these events in his books, Incident at Devil's Den, and the latest, Devil's Den, The Reckoning. So I'd like you all to join me in welcoming our guest tonight, Terry Lovelace. Hello, dear.
Hello, and thank you so kindly for that nice introduction. I appreciate it. And I appreciate the sage advice, too, and agree with you.
Thank you. I know when I've had experiences that are surreal, people kind of want to disregard what I've said or ask a lot of questions to prove me wrong. And I'm sure you've had those experiences quite a bit because you are out there in the public sharing your story. And I can relate to that. And I just thought, of all the things that we are going to talk about tonight, I hope everyone has a very open mind and a very open heart, which, we are here on KGRA. That usually is the case, but sometimes you never know. So I just invited them to do so.
Well, thank you. And, I had an experience at UFO Congress where this gentleman came up to my table and shook my hand, and then very kind of, he said, "Convince me."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I'm not here to convince anybody of anything. I'm here to tell you the truth of what happened to me without embellishment and candidly and honestly. And it's up to you to make up your mind. I can't make up your mind. And he was not happy with that answer, but that's the right answer. So everyone's welcome. Listen to my story. Some of it is very hard to believe. I know, I understand. But thank you for listening.
Thank you for showing up and being here and vulnerable enough to share authentically with us. It does take courage to be on that side of the conversation. So for those who aren't familiar with your story or who you are, well, let's just start with that. Let's give a little introduction of yourself. And then what is it that you're sharing with us tonight?
Sure. My name is Terry Lovelace. I was born in East St. Louis, Illinois, and grew up in South St. Louis, Missouri, in the city. Graduated from high school in 1973 and joined the United States Air Force and was on active duty from 73 until 79. I finished my enlistment, completed a bachelor's degree in psychology and a law degree from Western Michigan, and made my living in the law, which is really what kept me from going public or writing a book about this or speaking about it, because it would have cost me my job. I practiced law in private practice in Michigan for a while and was appointed as an assistant attorney general for the U.S. territory of American Samoa, the only U.S. territory south of the equator, with big people with big hearts and just a lovely island and just fantastic place to be. And served there for a while, and then was appointed assistant attorney general for the state of Vermont, where I retired in 2012, in January 2012. And up until this point, I had never disclosed this. My wife and I, we were married in 1977 when my major event happened, and we never shared it with anyone. I never shared it with a friend or a cohort or anyone because I didn't know who I could trust, really. I could trust my wife. I knew that. So in October of 2012, about 8 months after I retired, I was in Dallas where we have adult children and our grandkids. And I went to the ER. I had knee pain in my right knee. And I went and I had some routine x-rays done on my knee. And they were just confounded because I have what looks like an electrical device above my knee. And then there's a collection of bones that form like a floret pattern in the calf of my right leg muscle. And those x-rays are available at terrylovelace.com if anyone would like to see them. And that was really the catalyst. Until then, I was bound and determined not to tell anyone about this story ever. Mm-hmm. But that was validation that something non-human had put their hands on me, for better or for worse. And that was hard for me to process. And I decided that I wanted to write a book about it and wanted to speak about it publicly. And that's how I got here. The event that happened to me occurred in 1977. A friend and I went camping at Devil's Den State Park in northwest Arkansas. And we were abducted from our tent while we were sleeping. And we were taken aboard a craft, and we both experienced burns. I had like the most terrible sunburn I'd ever had in my life. We were both acutely dehydrated, and I had what the doctors called flash burns to my eyes. It's the same. It's the injury that a welder would get if they didn't pull that hood down over their face whenever they're doing welding. It's a sunburn to the cornea of the eye. It's painful. But I don't think it was intentional. I think it was collateral damage.
Where did the actual burns come from? The actual UFO itself, or something that happened during your experience?
We were taken inside the ship, and I have some memories, not many. I've never had a clear linear memory of what happened that night. I only have bits and pieces. Mm-hmm. But the inside of this thing was just incredibly brightly lit. Everything was stainless steel, gray or white, like porcelain. And it was just, I think that's where I got the burn. I don't know if it was radiation. I don't know where the burn came from.
I'm curious on how the burn healed. Was it similar to healing like a sunburn? Did you have any peeling of the skin?
My skin never blistered, never peeled. It just faded in about a week. My eyes, they treated with some kind of salve, and they were better in about a week. I was real photophobic. I had to be in a dark room or wearing, dark glasses. Mm. And the dehydration, we were acutely ill with. We were acutely dehydrated, and that they could cure with just giving us fluids by IV. And in 8 hours, we were much, much better. Okay,
so this, I know we're doing Cliff Notes definitely, and I do want to refer people to your book, which we'll do, and they can get all of the details there. It just, going back to, we have some photos that we wanted to share of, you said you actually had an implant that
yes.
you found. Was that something that you discovered recently, or was it something you discovered shortly after the event occurred?
Oh, no, I didn't discover it until October of 2012.
So quite a ways down the road.
Yes, shortly after, about 8 months after I had retired. And it was an epiphany for me. That is the wound that I suffered on November 17th of 2017, when, and I know that this is hard, but ET came and took the thing that was at the top of my knee, the thing that looked like an electrical device. and they punctured me on both legs. That bruising really didn't manifest for about 36 hours.
Interesting.
That the center wound was a deep puncture wound, and it was weird. It never bled, not a drop, and I could take my fingers and spread it apart and look in and see deep into my body, and it never got infected. It healed in a few days, just kind of scabbed over, and then it was gone. The bruising lasted about a week. So, and I woke up that morning, November 17th, 2017, and I told my wife, I said, I think they came and took this thing out of my leg last night.
So it was while you were sleeping in your home?
Correct.
And you have no recollection of other than the marks on your body?
That's right. And I tried to figure out, where do I go to get an x-ray? Because I know you can't walk into a freestanding radiology clinic and just order an x-ray. It takes a doctor's script or note or something. So I went to a chiropractor's office, and boy, by chance, I just happened to pick the best chiropractor. I mean, I happened to pick somebody who I think was either personally an experiencer, or from looking at 100 x-rays a week, he's maybe seen this before, and he wouldn't tell me. But I went to his office and I took copies of my x-rays, and I showed them to him, and I said, I think they came and they took them out last night. And I showed him the wounds, and he said, okay. He says, I'll make you a deal. He says, I'll write a script for your x-ray. I'll pay for your x-ray. Just promise me you won't use my name or the name of my clinic in your book. And, I've kept my word, obviously. And I went and got the x-ray, and he didn't have x-ray equipment there. I had to go to a clinic, x-ray clinic down the road, radiology clinic, and they took the x-rays there. So they gave them to me to take back to the chiropractor. Got to my car, I pulled them out because I knew where to look. And I saw, sure enough, it was gone. And he looked at them, and he was really busy. So he called me later that night and said, you saw your x-rays, I guess. And I said, yeah, I did, before I dropped them off. And he says, you saw the thing is out. I said, yes, I see it's gone. And he says, well, did you see they left you something? And I'm like, no. And he said, well, stop by and I'll show you. And I stopped by his office, and he showed me an x-ray film on my right leg, on the right side, my right side, right in the middle of my femur. There are two tiny wires that are about 1 centimeter long. It's not those. Those are about the diameter of the wires, but these are much closer. They're right next to my femur. They're where they'd be difficult to retrieve. Mm-hmm. And I asked the guy, I said, doctor, why, if these things are so smart, why would they be so inept as to leave these wires in my leg? Mm-hmm. And he said, they're not inept at all. He said, they don't do anything by accident. And he said, they probably gave you an upgrade. That's probably a 2017 model of the 1977 model they took out.
Okay, download that information. I've heard of experiencers, once they have had an experience, they have them several times. It's not just a one and done. Have you heard the same thing through your research? See, this is where I'm going to be a little bit different. All the other shows here on KGRA, this is their specialty, most of them. They are all different. They research this type of experience, where my show is more spiritually based.
Good.
The reason why I wanted you on the show is, yes, because of your experience, most definitely. But I'm curious to the experiences you've had, not just since that moment, because what I have read and through my research on this topic has, been more about spirituality and what their intent is with us spiritually, more so than what a lot of other people would think that they're here for other purposes, which I'm sure they are too, because there's different types and different reasoning. So the fact that they've come to upgrade you, they've definitely kept their eyes on you. They're keeping tabs of you in some way. Do you have an insight for yourself, knowing to yourself that, you know why they would be doing this, why they chose you, why they have this device inside of you, and why they would upgrade it?
No. I mean, I could make assumptions all day long, but
Yeah.
honestly, I don't have a clue. I don't know anything that would make me special or different from anybody else. I mean, I've had an average life. I've been a civil servant. I mean,
Mhm.
no, not a big deal. You know, I've been married for 46 years. We have 2 lovely adult children. You know, I've had a normal life in so many regards. But this has also been a parallel part of my life since age 4.
Okay, so you had experiences even before 1977.
Oh, yes, I did. I had experiences as a child between 4 and 9 years of age. When I was between the ages of 4 and 7 or so, I had, and this is going to sound bizarre, but I would wake up in my room at night and just feel eyes on me. And these 4 little monkeys would step out of the shadows. And I know that sounds bizarre. And when they first showed up, I thought they were kind of comical. You know, I saw them as non-threatening. But, you know, I think that they had the ability to be perceived by the child, to present themselves to the child in a way that the child will see as most benign. So I saw monkeys. I had a cousin my same age who saw clowns. I had people write to me. I should go into that. It's a little bit of a story, but I should go into that and tell me about seeing orbs and owls and deer and raccoons and little gray men and all kinds of things. So,
Well, it looks like, I mean, I'm having some conversation on the side with Bill. We're going to go ahead and skip the first break, and we'll head up to the top of the hour so you can continue on. I just know you have so much to share, and the story is so fascinating. And bringing awareness that these events are going on, it's not just people who are making up stories, is so important, I feel. And so I'd like you to continue with your story, please.
thank you. Thank you, Bill. You know, these things were a part of my life until age 11. At age 11, I had my last event that I recall. I also saw UFOs when I was 8 years of age in 1963, and then 3 years later when I was 11. And I saw a classic flying disc. I mean, they were brief encounters, but, you know, I kind of felt special because I saw them twice. I mean, it wasn't a one-on. It wasn't, like I say in my book, it wasn't like they made a wrong turn in Albuquerque. I felt like they came to see me.
So you had that knowing, that connection already at such a young age, knowing that they were there for you. Like you're knowing, you know, not just an assumption.
But, you know, after age 11, I enjoyed an 11-year hiatus without anything of an odd or supernatural, nothing at all till 1977.
You never felt like anything was watching you or
No.
creeping in the corner. Interesting.
But, you know, this experience that I had with these monkeys was, I was a child and I wasn't prepared for that, you know, and in that regard, it was a stressor. And I graduated from high school in 1973, and I felt sure that this chapter of my life had ended. And I still felt some anger at these things. I did. And then after 1977, I had a lot of anger. But, you know, that's really mellowed over the years. And when I look back at it, you know, maybe their laws of ethics, maybe their rules of ethics are a little different than ours. You know, but I don't think that they were outright malicious.
You don't feel so?
At least to me, they weren't. No, I mean, other people may have had. You know, I mean, they terrified me.
Mm-hmm.
You know
Did
what?
they terrify you because of the way that they show up, or just the not knowing?
Well, the whole experience, the monkeys that came and took me scared me badly. They didn't at first, but they Now, you know, they used to take me as a kid, and I know that, again, this is hard to process, but they would take me to this white domed room where there were other children, and we would play. We were all in our night clothes, and we'd play together. And then I'd wake up in the morning back in bed. And while I was on these play dates, I really wasn't afraid once I got to the playroom. But the interaction with the monkeys scared me for some reason.
Do you feel like they showed up as monkeys because they were thinking that children would be comfortable to see a monkey versus another life form?
I think a little more specific. I think they showed up because I think they thought in my mind, for me, that a circus monkey would seem the most benign. Mm. I think it's a familial thing. It runs in bloodlines. I had a cousin my age down in Arkansas who, the same time I'm seeing these monkeys, was seeing little diminutive 2-foot clowns visit him and take him.
So they show up somehow. They're getting into your mind to play with that, to see how they could show up for you. Do you feel that way?
I think so. I do.
Yeah, they are shapeshifters.
You know what I might do, if you don't mind? I wrote a poem about this.
I would love to hear it.
Okay.
If you would like to share it, I think that would be wonderful.
I would. Parts of it are a little hard to get through, but I've read it enough now that I actually wrote this. I was graduating from high school. I knew I was going to go into the Air Force. So I wrote this for a senior literature class or something. Got me an A, you know.
Totally. You wrote it some time ago.
Yeah, I wrote this when I was 18, thinking that this is a closed chapter in my life. Mm-hmm. And I wrote it kind of, I don't know, it was kind of emotional for me, but writing it was a help. And I'll read it. It's called 4 Grinning Monkeys. They always showed up in 4s.
That's interesting.
Shadows from the hallway crept into my room. Long the monkey men too, I assume. Never before in life had I seen a creature that grinned before I could scream. A candle's flame dances before it grows dim. One monkey man's shadow has slowly crept in on his knees and with ease, and is perched on the edge of my bed, if you please. The silence was broken 1 inch from my ear as the monkey men whispered, "My boy, I'm right here." Now monkeys were 4 and were masked to deceive children or even grown men, if you please. I started to tremble and covered my head, but monkeys all 4 crept close to my bed. Outside of my covers 4 peeled with delight. These monkey men here, will they take me this night? Faces with grins approached me to say, "Terry, won't you come with us and play? Come with us now, give us your hand, and we'll take you to an unbelievable land. You may not remember the last time or when, but come with us now, and you'll see it again." But I said, "You are not what you seem, and if you are real, then why can't I scream?" This night the monkeys men take me with ease, and I'm but a terrified child, if you please. These things are not men that are born of this earth. Near a star to the west is the place of their birth. It matters not what I do or say. Tonight, like the others, they'll take me away. Where shall I go and how long must I stay? Tell me, you 4. Tell me now, I do pray. We're going home, Terry. There's no reason for gloom. See that star over there, just east of your moon? We traverse great distance, pick you up, and we're gone, to return you to bed before breaks the dawn. We must take from you blood and things we do need. Many entities one day will be born of your seed. When I'm taken away, can my mom hear my calls across all the space, through brick and through walls? Will she think that I'm lost or been seized from my bed? Will she worry I suffer or fear I am dead? She'll cry and sob while we go and play, if I don't return before dawn breaks the day. And when I return, will I come back whole? Or will sinister deeds take some terrible toll? We'll soon arrive at the place we do dwell. You'll see it is neither a heaven nor hell. A place with 2 suns lights our day, a place that is different but also the same. The years have passed quickly as life slips my grasp. Pray tell me, why did you hurt me, I ask? From earth you take away women and men, and tag us and track us, toward what an end? We are sentient beings that feel, self-aware, but you are just monkeys, and monkeys don't care. As a child I had no voice to say what may come to pass on some future day. I have the need and the right to know what was done to me so many years ago. Surely you knew that one day I'd be grown, no longer helpless, no longer alone. Did you not believe that I lived to confess the memories you stole or failed to suppress? So flawed was your sinister plan, ill-conceived, that others first scoffed, but then come to believe. I swear by all that is holy and all that is right, the next time you come to take me at night, when 4 little monkeys crouch near my bed, I'll take my revolver and shoot them all dead. So
That was intense.
yeah,
Right? And you said in high school?
yeah, that was my senior year of high school.
How did your teacher respond to that?
Puzzled.
Mm-hmm.
He was very, very gracious. He thought the syntax and all that stuff was good, but
Right. Phenomenal writing. It's very intense and tangible. It feels very real. So for a teacher to read that work and not question where your mind was at in that time, I mean, that could be considered a wild imagination, right?
Sure. Science fiction?
Yeah, it wasn't though.
No, it wasn't.
When you were gone as a child, taken from your home, was there anyone in your home that would check on you through the evening and notice that you were missing?
I have one. My sisters, my family, we never discussed it when I was at home. It was just a topic that was off the table. And in 2018, when I published Incident at Devil's Den, I had a sister. She was 12 years older than I am. And she passed away about 4 years ago. 3 years ago. She passed away shortly after I put the book out.
Mm-hmm.
And we got together and I said, I was just getting ready to put the book. I was 2017. And I said, I've written this book about when I used to have these experiences at night. Do you have any memory of this, of me screaming and waking up the household? And she's like, oh God, yes. Yeah, you had terrible nightmares. We remember that. And I said, well, you know what? I think they were more than nightmares. I think that they came and took me.
Mm-hmm.
And she kind of teared up and she said, you know what we regret? You know what I regret? She said, I regret that I couldn't be of more help to you when the lights had come through the window and we couldn't find you in the house.
Okay, what?
That's what she said.
And then nothing gets discussed and no one goes and looks for you?
I'm not sure what they did, but she didn't want to discuss it. And believe it or not, that's not uncommon.
Right.
That's not uncommon.
I've heard that. I've heard of people, like you talk in your poem at the end about shooting them, but I've also heard different times where people have expected another visit and thought they would do the same, but in that moment they've been numb or they haven't had the desire to act out that way. That was taken from them.
Yes. Oh, yes. I think so too. I understand that. I understand that. What I was referencing is witnesses in common that see the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
After people share an experience, and I don't mean just seeing like a silver disc dart across the sky. I'm talking about something on a little more intimate level.
Mm-hmm. And you mean any type of experience?
Yeah, I mean any type of experience that involves a non-human entity. It could be Bigfoot. I don't know, but it's common for those people to drift apart. Mm-hmm. I call it the band breaks up. Friendships dissolve. Marriages dissolve.
I think anything traumatic, like highly traumatic, if you aren't able to discuss it and really get through it together, that's exactly what happens.
Yeah, if you read, Ray Fowler wrote a wonderful book in 1973, I believe, called The Allagash Four. And it was about four guys, young guys in their early 20s, Jim and Jack Weiner, a man named Kay or Kai, and I forget the fourth guy's name. But they were friends. They were friends. They hung out together. They fished together. They hunted together. They drank together. They were pals, And they went out on this canoe on a lake off the Allagash River in Maine in 1973. And they saw what they thought was the moon. And then they realized it wasn't the moon. They were out in the middle of a lake. And this thing shined a light that lit up the inside of that aluminum canoe like crazy. And then the next thing they knew, they had arrived at shore by their campsite. So that missing time, obviously. Mm-hmm. And their campfire that was meant to burn for 6 hours as a beacon so they could find their way back to their campsite was just embers by now. And they all got out of the boat, said, good night. And the next day they drove home. And all four of those people had friendships, and twins. Twins are naturally close to one another. Mm-hmm. They drifted apart. Nobody wanted to talk about the fishing trip. Nobody did. Mm-hmm. And a couple years later, Jack Weiner was having these terrible nightmares. And he calls his brother Jim. And he says, I got something crazy to ask you. I've been having these crazy nightmares. And his brother says, yeah, me too. And they compared notes, and they were having the same dream. And that's what led them to have polygraph, hypnotic regression, and the whole story came out about their abduction. And But yeah, it's a very common thing for people to drift apart. As a matter of fact, after my friend Toby and I had our experience, we still had a 6.5-hour drive to drive back to Whiteman Air Force Base from Devil's Den State Park. And on the way back, yeah, we were hurting, we were burned, but 6.5 hours is a long time to spend in a car with someone. And you would think that two people who had just been through this traumatic event would want to debrief and want to talk and validate it and say, man, did you see what I saw? But we didn't do any of that.
You had no conversation about what happened to you.
Not one bit. The only conversation that we had was we agreed. We made a pact, a promise that we would never tell anyone that we saw a UFO, because we knew, being in the military as an enlisted man in NCO in 1977, there'd be a trip to the psych ward and a discharge, a medical discharge, no question. So but we also had an ethical issue about we didn't want to lie. So we agreed that we would tell them, if asked, that we went to bed feeling funny and we woke up sick as dogs and we just came home and we left all our stuff there. We left our tent, my friend's cooler and backpack, our air mattresses, all of our stuff. I carried my wallet and my keys. We ran to the car and drove out of there. We left all our stuff there.
That quickly. I was going to ask you in the beginning when you talked about getting medically treated after this event, what is it that you told them? And what happened? Did they believe your story? Because I'm sure you didn't tell them the truth.
Here's what happened. I got home. My wife took me to the hospital. I had 103 fever. I had this burn. I was sick, and I was just acutely dehydrated. And Toby's wife, Toby lived just a few blocks over from me in NCO housing. And Toby's wife took him, and my wife took me. And we got there. And remember, we were members of the medical squadron. We worked in the ER. And medical people take care of their own. They do a nice job. And, it was a little bit embarrassing. I mean, everybody in the squadron, a small squadron, everybody knew we were going on this camping trip. And it was our first time camping ever. So it was a little embarrassing in that regard. But everyone was very empathetic and supportive. I had the most extensive medical exam I'd ever had in my life. And right as it was winding down, the hospital commander, the base commander, and two guys in civilian clothes I didn't know came into the exam room and asked the doctor to excuse himself. And he did. He went out and shut the door. And the hospital commander told me I was to have no contact with my friend, Toby. Not in any way, shape, or form. I can't speak with him verbally. I can't speak with him by phone. I can't send him a note. I can't communicate through third parties. I can't give him anything. He's not to give me anything, and on and on and on and on. Followed with, and that's an order, Sergeant. If you disobey my order, there'll be consequences. Do you understand me? And I thought, yeah, I understand consequences. The reason why I didn't understand, but it was strange. Something changed. This guy,
They knew what happened.
this guy used to be my best friend. We worked together for 3 years. Our wives were friends. On our days off, we usually spent, either at barbecuing one another's house or playing badminton or, volleyball or something. And suddenly I wanted nothing to do with the guy. And I really had trouble processing that information back then. Still do to this day.
That was a feeling. You didn't want anything to do with him. It wasn't just because you were ordered not to.
No, I genuinely did not. And
is that something that occurred when you both were gone? That was there some thoughts changed inside of you somehow to not care for one another so you wouldn't discuss the experience?
I think so. I think two things. I think number one, we went down there as teenagers, really, and came back as adults. And number two, I think it speaks to the influence that these entities can have over us.
Yeah.
I do. And also, I spoke with a gentleman, Robert Hastings, who wrote a book called UFOs and Nukes, and he's interviewed thousands, literally, of experiencers that were on active duty military. And he confirmed for me that it's absolutely standard procedure that you break up these people and they not have any contact with one another. They shipped Toby off to Japan at light speed.
Oh, yeah. They definitely separated you.
Yeah.
I have heard that across the board from what I have, the stories that I have heard when there's a group, more than one person that has the experience together, they're separated in that way. Something happens that forces them apart to never be together again.
That's right. Yeah.
It's part of the plan.
Yeah. I thought I'd feel better because after this, I was an emotional wreck. I really was. And so was Toby. And, I had my struggles, I admit. And I felt that I would feel better if I could stop by and tell him goodbye. I knew I'd be violating an order and risk being locked up. But, he lived 4 blocks from my house. I wanted to stop by. I felt like I owed him I wanted to embrace him, pat him on the back and say, really nice working with you, man. I've enjoyed it. Thanks for your friendship. I wish you guys the best of luck in Japan. I hope you have a good tour. And, but when I saw him, it didn't work out that way. When I saw him, here this guy was my best friend, weeks earlier, and I saw him and I felt stunned. I felt awkward. And,
like he was a stranger of sorts?
I felt like it just didn't, yeah. It was just different. It wasn't the same. It was, I don't know how else to describe it. And I think he felt the same, and he walked up to me, and he was a few inches shorter than I was and am. And instead of embracing him, I reached out for a handshake at the same time he did, and we missed and kind of made this inelegant handshake out of it. And I said, yeah, I just want to wish you guys the best. And he kind of cut me off. And he had tears in his eyes. They weren't rolling down his cheek, but there were tears in his eyes. And he asked me, he says, it happened, didn't it, Terry? And I said, yes, my brother, it really happened. You're not losing your mind. And he said, yeah, but why us? And I said, man, I don't have a clue. And I ran out of the house and ran to the car. But I got no closure out of that whatsoever. Nothing. It was not what I expected it to be.
Yeah, it seems like an awkward conversation, especially when the connection was lost. To have a conversation that was just so profound, it feels very off, very off.
Yeah.
I just have a hard time wrapping my head around that experience because that event was so huge, so profound, and yet you guys are complete strangers and not one word all the way home. It to understand, and I'm going to call it power, to understand the power that these beings have over us is it is terrifying, but not to live in a place of fear. Like why are they coming here? Have you gotten any insight on that, on why they chose you or what that experience looked like for you afterwards? Have you had anything come forward as far as what their purpose is on doing experiments with humans?
You know, what is their agenda? I mean, that's a question I
The
really
loaded
wish I could
question.
answer. You know, it would be a pure assumption on my part, because I don't know what their agenda is. And I don't know why they choose certain people. I think it does seem to follow bloodlines. You know, my son saw something when he was 13. He didn't admit this to me until I published the book. When he was 13 years old, he saw a little gray guy stick his head around the corner of his bedroom door and look in, and they made eye contact. And I said, were you in bed? And he says, no, I was sitting on the side of the bed. He said, I'm absolutely certain I was not asleep.
He was completely aware.
Completely aware. And I said, well, why didn't you tell me? And he says, I don't know. I just felt like, and you know, that brings up a point too, and talking about their influence. And that was it. You know, I had this x-ray in 2012, and I made the decision that I had to write a book. I had to speak publicly about it. But it really took me until 2016 to get started, and really till 2017 to start writing the book. And I felt terrible. I felt like I was violating some kind of fiduciary trust. I felt like I was, you know, revealing a family secret or something.
There was a lot of guilt that went along with sharing this information.
There is. I felt, that's exactly the word for it. I felt guilty, like I was betraying them. And that makes no sense.
That's interesting. No, that doesn't make any sense. You know, it's always been a secret, right? But that they're out there. It's always been hidden from us. And, you know, with the whole, I don't want to get political by any means. I won't go down that road. But they're for Trump, for instance, he wanted to get it out there to the world, to Earth, that we are not alone. We are not here having this experience by ourselves. And I'm wondering why it's always continuously getting shut down. Obviously, he was silenced, like many other people before him. And if they're here interacting with us, why is it not important for us to know this?
You know, I said this last night, and I think it's so important to say every opportunity I get. And I think that as human beings, you know, I think our government, I think every world government owes it to their people to be candid and tell them what's going on. And, you know, if they're concerned there are going to be riots in Tokyo or New York City, so be it. But tell us the truth. There's an interesting article from the December 8th Jerusalem Post that I read online. And it's a story written by a Dr. Haim Eshed, who was a very esteemed Israeli general. He was in charge of their space defense. And afterwards, he was a university professor. And he's retired now, but he came out with a public statement and said that the United States, Israel, and the Galactic Federation, which sounds really Star Trek-y to me, and I'm not a science fiction fan whatsoever, but the Galactic Federation, which is, you know, what it sounds like, a federation, a conglomerate of non-human entities from other galaxies or planets or whatever. Trump was going to make a candid, forthright disclosure, and supposedly, according to Haim Eshed, E.T. dissuaded him from doing that. I'd like to have been a party to that conversation, wouldn't you?
Right. I did hear you talk about that last night. I was able to catch part of the show, and that was part of it. Now that I remember, but it's curious to me why. I mean, not just that. There's so many things that are hidden from us from our government, and that's a whole other show, a bunch of other topics. But why this? That's the thing, is we have so many races and so many different types of humans here. Why would it scare us to know that there were more beings outside of this planet? Why are we being trained to believe selfishly that we are the only ones that exist? I just have the hardest time wrapping my head around that. But we're going to talk more about your experience and hear about your books, because you just came out with a second one. I want everyone to make sure that they are aware of it and reading it. So when we'll get back, we'll hear more about your experiences here on Soul Wanderings. Stay close, everyone. We'll be right back.
Hey members, the new KGRA-DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA-DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA-DB.
I don't want to talk about it.
I don't want to talk about it.
Families don't have to talk about everything, but they should talk about how to plan for an emergency. Get tips and resources to make your family's emergency plan.
Welcome to the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. Here you'll find great new content, including the KGRA Classics, great shows from our archives. You'll be able to see the show times and information so you can see what show is currently on air. The on-air live button, so just go to this section and you'll be able to hear the show live with exceptional sound quality. We also have the Vault section. Make sure to subscribe to get access to great content and special features. We have the make content for our latest news and events, so make sure to sign up and you can be part of our forum. So make sure to check out the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. We look forward to seeing you there, and we hope that you enjoy the new website.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. You are listening to Soul Wanderings here on KGRADB.com. And we've been getting to know our guest a little better, Terry Lovelace. He's the author of Incident at Devil's Den and the latest Devil's Den, The Reckoning, which we'll hear more about here later in the show. Thank you, Bill, for throwing up those photos. Hi, Terry. Welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be back.
I was talking to Eric during the break. The energy in here is intense tonight, and I'm not anywhere near you. I don't know what's going on. My mind keeps going blank, and I'm definitely tongue-tied. And I'm like, what is happening right now? That doesn't happen very often, and maybe it's a coincidence, and I'm sure that it is. But the energy is just... Do you find, now that that's happening to me, do you find that these things happen when you're sharing your experience with other people? Does the energy in the room shift, or do the people you're sharing with have some type of energy
It
challenge?
happens all the time. It happens. I was on Whitley Strieber's Dreamland in March, and we had a show. And then just a few minutes into the show, we had this weird tone in the background that you could hear, and we weren't sure what it was. But we checked our equipment, tried to work through it, but we couldn't get rid of it. So Whitley has a sound engineer that works for him. So he sent the file to his sound engineer, and the sound engineer, he sent me the email. The sound engineer said, well, I've isolated it. There are two tones. They're exactly like they're X number of hertz or something. And then this is exactly double that. There are two layers of sound. And he said that the sound engineers sent him first email and said, man, I got the readings off my machine and it was turned off.
Wow.
And I have that kind of stuff happen to me. I think I mentioned last night, my TV will go on in the middle of the night in the living room, 2 a.m. All of a sudden, I'll hear an infomercial or something on TV. And, it's happened to us for so long. My wife and I are just like, you want to get them to do it or you me to do it? I'll do it. Okay. I get up, I go turn the TV off. And
Yeah.
just lots of weird little things.
Since your experience I believe you said 2017, where the implants were replaced, have you had anything else happen since then, or is it another time frame where it goes quiet for you?
No, it's not been quiet. I've seen a lot of UFOs, and I know this sounds cliche, but it's true. I had helicopters like buzzing my old house all the time. I mean, and they would come typically between 9 and 11 a.m. in the morning. Mm-hmm. And when you come out my front door, there's a big tree on one side and the morning sun on the other. So my field of vision was really limited to 180 degrees in back of me. And that happened for about 8 months. And actually, Lou Elizondo was so interested, and he flew out and spent 2 days with me. And to photograph the helicopters, and he wanted to hear my story and tape it. And his cameraman came in with a camera, and we started filming. And he's like, cameraman's like, 5 minutes into it, cameraman's like, He said, batteries dropped to 0. I got to go get another one. He goes out to the car. I'm like, yeah, that happens. Comes back in with a fresh pack of batteries, puts another one in. We film for 10 minutes, and then it drops to 0.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So he never saw a helicopter over my house, but after the interview was done on the second day, we went to a Tex-Mex place that's very good food here in Garland, Texas. And, all the cameras are locked up in the back of the van. So his cameraman doesn't have his camera. And we come out of the restaurant, we step up to the street where our cars are parked. And right up this main street of old downtown Garland comes a huge green olive drab helicopter about 400 feet off the ground doing about 200 miles an hour right up the street, right over our heads. And I was like, yeah, I get it.
So they're seeing something that a lot of us aren't seeing. They're picking up something on their radar. Is that what you're saying?
Boy, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what the purpose of the helicopters were. That was confusing to me. I didn't understand. And at first it was comical. At first it was a joke. Did they reroute the traffic copter? Blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. But after a while, it started to really wear us down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I could see how it would. I mean, there's constant things going on around you since your incident. I feel like they keep an eye on you. Like, what are you saying? And who are you talking to? And are you keeping your word? Because they were so kind with their threats. Yeah. Stay away from your friend. And it mind boggles me how secret everything is. Yet, humans, they can be stupid, let's be honest. But a lot of us are not. And we are aware. We know what's going on. We're being gaslighted big time.
I think so.
Take a deep breath. I'm curious. You've had this experience and you kept it quiet for so long. And I understand why. He had a professional career that you had to keep this experience or experiences under wrap. But at some point, you obviously decided, I don't want to hold this inside anymore. I'm ready to heal and move forward. And doing that, part of doing that is to write about it and share it with the world.
Yes.
What was that like for you? What was the experience for you to make that decision? That's a big decision, and then do the work behind it to put it out there.
Seeing the X-rays was the tipping point for me. It was validation that they'd put their hands on me, and I just felt that I had to tell the world. I wanted people to know. Not so much about my experience, but I wanted them to know that the phenomenon is real. That that there is stuff that some of us see and some of us don't see. I've seen a bunch of flying saucers and weird things in the sky and triangles and all kinds of stuff, and most people spend a lifetime and never see a thing. Mm-hmm. My wife and I came out of her opticians. And they didn't dilate her pupils or anything, nothing wrong with her sight. We came out of her optician's office, and we're walking back to the parking lot. This is in 2017 or 16, somewhere around that time frame. Anyway, we walked to the parking lot, and we saw this woman who's like this, looking up into the air. And so naturally, I looked up in the air, and above us was a perfect cigar-shaped silver UFO. And I said, "Oh my God!" I said, "Sheila, I asked my wife, can you see that?" And I pointed to it, and she says, "No, I don't see anything." And we had this conversation once before too. I said, "You don't see that?" And she's like, "No, I don't see anything." And the lady in the parking lot's maybe 20 feet from us, and I said, "Madam, can I ask you, are you looking at what I'm looking at?" And she looks at me and just goes, So, yeah, I knew what we saw. But I think sometimes some people see them and some people can't. And I don't know why. I don't know the agenda.
When we see these saucers or whatever flying around above us, now that we're living by technology so easily, everyone has a phone in their hand. Why aren't more photos being taken? Is that something else that they're working with our minds not to do?
Yeah, I think so. And I'll tell you why I think so. Is that when Toby and I were at that campsite in June of 1977, we saw a UFO that manifested first as three little stars on the horizon. Mm-hmm. And it started to move up into the sky. And it was one solid object. And as soon as it started to move up into the sky, I had this feeling of calm wash over me. And my friend had experienced the same thing. And to make a long story short, we watched this thing. It glided in. It was a triangle the size of a Walmart. And it parked on this meadow where we were camped. It parked above the meadow. Thankfully, we had parked on a tree line off to the side, so the thing wasn't hanging right over our heads. And we watched this thing for some time, and it shined some lights down on the campsite and just some strange stuff, and didn't hear any noise. And we both felt sedated. I felt not only sedated, but mildly disinterested even. Mm-hmm. I felt like I wasn't a participant. I was just an observer. And then all of a sudden, that sedation transitioned to sleepy. Mm-hmm. And all I wanted to do was go to bed and go to sleep. So, but the whole time, I say this all because the whole time that this is going on, this thing glides in, parks over the field, over the meadow where we're camped, until the time we got to bed. Toby, my friend, had a camera in his backpack a foot away from him. I was an amateur photographer. I mean, I was one of those people that always had a camera in somebody's face. You know how annoying that can be. And the thought to take a photograph of this thing never crossed my mind. And I don't get that. Never.
Yeah, that is so interesting. I was at a UFO conference, with Race and Robin were with me at Ozark. And there was someone who came to the booth, the KGRA booth, and was showing us a video of what they thought was a UFO. And great footage. I thought it was really cool. But I've tried to do the same. And I was just taking video of the sky. Like when I went back to watch it, there was nothing there. Absolutely nothing there. And so that was my experience before. So watching this video and seeing it, they actually had the thought and went through with it and was able to record. And I don't know what the end result was. They were asking Race what he thought and if they believed it was a UFO or what they thought it was. But they actually didn't have that thought taken away from them. And that was the first time I actually saw someone, like a real live interaction, share something that was tangible that you could actually see. But most people that I've talked to, like, have you ever seen a UFO? And did you take pictures? They're like, no, I didn't take pictures. I didn't even think to take a photo. And that just blows my mind because everyone literally carries their phone with them everywhere now, but no one's showing pictures of what they're seeing. Or they're having the same experience I did where there was nothing when they took the photo, which just is mind-blowing to me.
That is mind-blowing.
Makes you feel crazy.
Some of this stuff does make you question. Yes. Yes.
You know you saw it. It was there, but it wasn't. You have no proof, so you're crazy.
Yeah, but I also know that I'm sane, and I know what I see. And
you seem very logical, and the thing that blows me away is that you talk about it so calmly, and you have shared it a lot of times. I understand that, but with your book, tell us a little bit about that. Tell us, is it a story of your whole entire experience? Do you have photos in there? Like, give us a little glimpse into the book so we can go out and buy it and read it for ourselves.
Yeah, let me talk about, I've talked about Incident at Devil's Den, and there's some photographs in the back of this too. Mm-hmm. Mostly the photos that you see on terrylovelace.com. And then the second book, what I did was I put an email address in the back of Incident at Devil's Den. And I said, look, I'm not a doctor or a therapist, but if you've had an experience that you'd like to share with someone, I'd be very privileged if you shared it with me, and I'll get back to you. And I thought, I'll get maybe 50 or maybe 100 emails, right? And at the time that I wrote the second book, I had over 1,400 emails from people.
I believe it. That's a lot, and I believe it.
And it is such a privilege when someone writes to you and said, I've never shared this with anyone in my life. Mm-hmm. And then they share it with me. And it's very humbling. It is. Yeah. And, I'm kind of a data-given guy, and I like to keep statistics, and I like to keep a spreadsheet because I began to note commonalities that these people had in their stories. Mm-hmm. And we talked about one earlier, and that is that a group of people witness something, and then the group of friends breaks up, goes in different directions. I got a couple stories in here about people that had that happen. In
all of the stories that you heard, was there any one story that you received that you were just totally mind blown or boggled about?
There were probably 4, and it'd be a tie to come up with. And I could give you some examples if we got a little bit.
Oh, we still have 45 minutes, dear.
Oh, good.
You have plenty of time to share. Isn't it awesome?
It is. It is.
It's so good.
The first story in the back of the book, and it's number 1 for a reason. I got an email from a 76-year-old woman from Henderson, Nevada, who said, "I've never shared this with another living human being. It was a secret between my husband and I. And it happened in March of 1968. And she went on to explain that she was married to a nephrologist, her husband, Paul, who passed away in 1983. I call her Olivia. All the other facts I have her permission to use. But her name, I'll just refer to her as Olivia. And Olivia told me that when she was in 1968, her husband was a young nephrologist at a Las Vegas hospital. And, like all doctors, he was working 60, 70 hours a week, and they didn't get to see each other very much. But his employer would give him 1 4-day weekend a month. And during that 4-day weekend, they would make the drive from Las Vegas, Nevada to Reno, where they had family, and go up there and have a nice long weekend. So, and it was time for them to spend together, time, because it was a couple-hour drive from Vegas to Reno, and time for them to talk in the car and chat. And there's a halfway point, a little town. It's still there. It's called Tunapa. And there was, back in 1968, there was a little truck stop with a diner there called the Stagecoach. The same structure is still there today. It's now called the Station, but it's the same place. And they would stop there, eat dinner, get some gas, and they got a late start. They usually made the drive during the daytime. They'd leave early in the early afternoon, but he got tied up at the hospital, so they had to make it at night this time. So they had dinner, and I asked her, I said, "Did you have anything to drink?" And she's like, "No, we didn't drink any alcohol whatsoever." And I said, "Well, can I ask you, did you wear glasses?" No, didn't wear glasses. "Was your windshield clean?" "Yeah, windshield was clean." And she told me that after they left the Stagecoach, they're driving, they're about 10 minutes outside of Tunapa, and they see this glowing white light in the distance. And they drive for it, and she can see it's this box store. Well, not like a big box store, but a box store about the size of a McDonald's maybe. Mm-hmm. And she said that it had the word Christmas spelled out in neon lights on top of the roof. And she said she was amazed because it was the first time in her life she'd ever seen a store devoted solely to the holiday of Christmas. And it was March, and she didn't quite get it. And they pulled their car over right in front of this place. And she described it as having like a million Christmas lights, like you put on a Christmas tree, wrapped around and around it. And some were blinking and some were not. And the inside of the place was lit up like crazy. That seems to be a common theme too. And she said they pulled off the road. They're on the shoulder of the road, right in front of the place, looking at it. And she said that, quote, "We zoned out for a minute or two." And I said, "Well, what does that? What does that mean?" And she says, "Oh, I don't know. We were just kind of taken with this place." She had emailed me and asked me to call her because she said typing emails was too cumbersome. She'd rather have a telephone conversation. I wanted to have a telephone conversation with her, to be honest, because at 76, I just wanted to judge her. I mean, her writing was flawless, but I wanted to judge her cognitive, not that I'm qualified to do that, but I wanted to have an idea, was she cognitively intact? And right. She sure was. I mean, an educated, well-spoken woman. And she said that while they stared at this place, she said, "Yeah, let's pull in." And her husband's like, "Well," he's flicking on the bright lights, and he's like, where would you suggest I do that?" And she told me, she says, her words, I couldn't understand who would build a business without an egress. There was no driveway. And then they look closer, and there's no paved parking lot. There's no cars. There's nothing in front of the place but sand and sagebrush.
Wow.
And they stayed there for a minute or two, and then Paul says, "This is silly. Let's get out of here." And they got back on the road, and she told me that as soon as they got back on the road, she fell asleep. Now, she said in all the trips that we made to and from Tunapa, she never slept in the car. That that was, golden time for them as a fairly newlywed couple to catch up on each other's lives and what's been happening and just share and talk. And they got to the hotel, and because I asked her about missing time, and she said, well, our schedule was off because we don't normally travel. We travel normally during the day, not in the evening. So I don't even remember what time we got to the hotel. And she said, but it was odd because when we got to the hotel, it was usual that we would have a drink and then go to bed. And we skipped going to the bar and went straight to bed instead. And slept late the next morning and felt, quote, out of sorts all day the next day, but then felt back to normal, the following. And they came back and they didn't talk about it. And on the way back in the car, Paul says to her, says, hey, let's stop at that stupid little Christmas store that doesn't have a driveway. I want to see. And she says, I'm glad you said that. Yeah, let's do that. So that was their plan. And you know the outcome, right? There was no Christmas store.
Right.
It wasn't there. And what's interesting is she remembered it as being a brick structure, and he saw it as being made out of like rustic barnwood.
Oh, two very different visions.
But otherwise, the lights, the Christmas and green neon, the sagebrush, everything else was identical. But that's a pretty big distinction.
It is. And going back to how they present themselves when you were a child, how they showed up as monkeys for you and differently for other people, it sounds like it would be the same experience for them. Like he would have preferred the more rustic version versus what she saw. But did you ever ask them if they both had, a love for Christmas and that's something that they had in common and that's what attracted them to that? Is that what was going on for them?
No, she actually was Jewish.
Wow.
As was her husband.
It's just crazy Christmas.
Yeah.
They must think we really love Christmas.
Well, she told me that they did love Christmas, and they did celebrate when their children were little. But she said it wasn't a major thing in their life by any stretch. It was she was just very, very compelling. And, I keep coming back to why would a 76-year-old woman make up a fairy tale?
Yeah, I mean, really. But honestly, I mean, there are people who do make up these stories. And a lot of times they can, kind of be, I know. Especially when you've had an experience yourself, what's real and what's not. I don't know why people would make up the story, but the thing is the stories are being shared now. That's the important thing, I feel.
It is.
Like we are having the conversations and we're talking about our experiences. And if you don't believe, you begin to at least question it, expanding our minds to what if they are telling us the truth and what it really is going on, where those things didn't get done before. Like when you had your experience, you don't talk in those years in the 60s and the 70s, you don't talk about anything like this. No,
you don't. I found that out actually in 1963 when I saw a UFO. I screamed for my mother. I was in the backyard and I was playing with a bow and arrow and I saw this perfectly circular shadow move across my feet and I looked up and here was this beautiful flying saucer like 50 feet over my head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I screamed for my mother and she comes out, she dragged me inside and I said, Mom, it was so cool. Did you see it? It was a flying saucer. And she was like, stop saying that. You did not see a flying saucer. Now, Terry, I don't know what you saw, but you did not see a flying saucer. And I didn't understand because I'll tell you, I was a pretty straight kid. I didn't make up stories. I didn't tell lies.
But that's what parents did. Adults did.
That's exactly what adults did. It was that conformity thing in the early 1960s, because my dad came home and he came in and he said, now what's all this business about flying saucers? And, I was always quick to correct him on his grammar. I'm like, it was singular. It was one saucer. That just made him angrier. Then he's like, look, you can't tell people you saw a flying saucer. They'll think there's something wrong with you.
Mhm.
Then he said, they'll think there's something wrong with us. And I was like, I get it now. Yeah.
No, and myself included, and a lot of my guests, we've had spiritual or paranormal experiences as children. And, at our age and older, we are definitely told, don't talk about it, or you have a wild imagination, or, that's not real. Whatever statement is said to shush our experience, it definitely happened. I want to kind of shift this over to spiritual conversation a little bit, because that's my jam.
I knew you were going there. I'm all ready. I was going to say.
I really like talking about spirituality and other galaxies and universes and beings, because I feel like we're all spiritual beings. And, just like humans, there's good and evil in every species. And I believe that some of them are here to do us harm and some of them are not here to do us harm. They're actually here to protect us. With your experiences, what is your take spiritually with these other beings? And on the flip side of that, are you, or were you, or what is your belief on spirituality to begin with?
My belief in spirituality is a strong belief in God, and a monotheistic God, and an all-knowing, all-loving entity.
Mm-hmm.
I used to be active in organized religion, and I'm not anymore, but I'm not any less spiritual for it. And I still pray. I know how to pray. I believe in prayer. Moreover, this topic as a whole has a spiritual component to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that, and that's been validated for me. Someone who was affiliated with To the Stars Academy, I won't use his name, he's very kind to me, and I don't mean Lou, admitted to me that there is a spiritual component to all this. And I was with, there is a New York Times, you probably know her name, there's a New York Times reporter named Leslie Kean, she spells it Kean, Kean, and she's the one that broke the December 17, 2017 story about the Tic Tacs and the Roosevelt carrier, which really, if you look at it, pretty much was disclosure, although, nobody paid any attention. But we were asked to speak at Rice University in Houston, which was a great honor to speak to academia, because academia is one of the areas where people aren't really open to the topic yet. Mm-hmm. And we were invited down by a gentleman, Dr. Jeffrey Kripal, who has co-authored 6 books with Whitley Strieber. And Rice University has all of Whitley's, Aunt Anne's letters, correspondence. You probably heard the story by Whitley about, before the days of email, when he published Communion, the mailman would come with a bag of mail, and 200,000 pieces of correspondence. They have, the humanities department has copied those and cataloged them, and they're making them available for people to come in and do research, which is a great thing. Mm-hmm. But they invited us to speak. Leslie spoke on the topic of UFOs. I spoke on the topic of alien abduction. And we spoke, this was weird. There was no public invited. We spoke to all the profs from the humanities department, including their deans, including the theology department, and PhD candidates, and there was some master's candidates in there too, I think. And that was our audience. And I thought, man, this is going to be a tough crowd, right? And I was wrong. They were open and leaning forward in their chairs and listening and taking notes and just enthralled by the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And just asking very very cogent, very, very good questions. But I digressed a little bit. As part of Leslie's presentation, she had a document that she shared that was a government document. And I won't go into a lot of detail other than to say that it looked authentic to me. Mm-hmm. And I trust Leslie Kane as a professional journalist. And if she presented the document, I believe that it was given to her by someone that would have reason to have that document and that she thoroughly vetted it before she shared it. But in it, they had an XY graph, vertical line and in the axis at the bottom. And it went below the line at the bottom, what we normally call the X axis that goes horizontal. Mm-hmm. There was subhuman, I forget the exact word, subhuman. It didn't say Satan or demonic, but it's like something like subhuman. And then above it was animals, and then human intelligence, non-human intelligence. And then it shifted from even paranormal to supernatural. And it says angels. And then at the very top, it said God. And this was a United States Department of Defense document.
Unbelievable.
So I think they know so much more than they share with us.
Yeah, they do. Absolutely. Do you feel comfortable sharing with us what spiritual aspect you believe? You said there is a spiritual aspect to all of this that you believe. What do you feel that is? For you personally?
For me personally, I'm going to stay away from organized religion, but I'm going to answer your question. And it's going to sound a little out there, and I apologize in advance.
This is your experience, your journey. So
I believe that the universe is a living entity. I think that there's a web that we are unable to perceive. But think about it. Between dark matter and dark energy, mathematically, that accounts for 96%, 95%, depending on who you talk to, of all matter in the universe. Mm-hmm. 96%. So everything that we can experience with our four senses, our instruments, our satellites, our telescopes, microscopes, everything that we can experience falls within only 5% of the known universe. Mm-hmm. So we're kind of like Helen Keller, stumbling around out there. There's so much is out there that we just can't perceive with our senses. Mm-hmm. So what's out there? Who knows? But I think that every planet, every galaxy, I think there's some type of interconnected web of some kind. That's an assumption on my part. I'm not a physicist.
Yeah.
But I think that just like UFOs, near-death experiences, Bigfoot, all of this stuff has a thread of commonality that runs through it. Mm-hmm. And I think that thread leads back to some source. Mm-hmm. So in a nutshell, that's kind of my spin on spirituality.
Thank you for sharing that. It's interesting to me, the take that each person has, and some of it's very similar and some of it is different. I just love hearing the different perspectives, because we all are here having this human experience, trying to figure out what the purpose is, right? And nobody has the answers, nor will they ever have them here. And so I like to hear the different perspectives, and I like to consider other avenues for myself even, but I also know my listeners do too, because we're all here questioning. That's why we're here on the station. Everyone's wondering what the truth is.
Yes.
Whatever topic it is that we're discussing, we want to know more. We want to hear the opinions of others and the research of others. Yeah. Because we're looking for those answers.
And consciousness now is a great big topic. Everybody talks about consciousness. And, I kind of was curious about that. My undergraduate degree is in psychology. So I knew a little bit about, I never worked in the field. It was just an undergrad degree. But they taught me that consciousness was a state of awareness. And, I started thinking about that. I had some surgery a couple years back, and the anesthesiologist came in, and I knew that when you're anesthetized, you don't dream, there's no brain activity maybe there's brain activity, but we don't dream. We're just kind of out, like the switch is turned off.
Mm-hmm.
So I figured this guy's got to be an expert on consciousness, right? And I said, "Hey, Doc, can you tell me what is consciousness?" And he rolls his eyes because I bet I was the 10th person to ask him that month,
Right.
And he says, "It's a state of awareness." And I said, "Well, that's kind of vague. There's got to be a little more to it than that." And he said, "Good night," and pressed the plunger in, and that was the end of our conversation. But I had an interesting conversation with Daryl Sims. Daryl was connected with Dr. Roger Lear, who removed implants from people. He was a California podiatrist back. He passed away in 2014. And Daryl is a researcher down in Houston and speaks a lot and has written a book. And he's been around for a while. And we were talking. He invited me down to Houston, and we're talking. And he blew me away with the story about this woman who was abducted, taken aboard a craft, and was shown a holographic image of herself, just laying flat. And the entities there ask her to point where the human soul resides. And she was like, I don't know. I can't. It's in my body. It's just in me. And they weren't pleased with her answer. But I think they want to know. Some people are of the opinion that what their agenda might be,
Mm-hmm.
and this is just what I've heard from other people. I'm not sure if I agree with it or not, but that maybe these entities aren't on the same level as we are with a soul. And maybe that's part of their interest in us. And, I read Edgar Cayce as a kid. And in Edgar Cayce, he talks about reincarnation on different planets, and that people here could be reincarnated from different planets.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's always interested me. It's kind of validation, like we need validation. I think we all know we have a soul. Most of us do.
Yeah.
Hope we do. Yeah.
I somewhat have that belief system also, that we reincarnate in different ways, and it's not always as a human or an animal here on Earth. I believe that we can reincarnate into different beings from different universes. I don't see why that wouldn't be a possibility. They're really endless if you believe in the power of the universe or a source creator. Why would we always just be human? What is the point of always coming here and reincarnating as a human being?
Well, if the purpose of the exercise is for us to gain experience, life experience,
right,
it would make sense to have a rich texture of different societies and cultures and beings and
right. But always, why not have it more spread apart than just being a human?
No, that's what I mean. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. To experience the full richness of being a living entity.
Yes. And maybe they don't have souls, and that's why you have the opportunity to come and have an experience as a human, because that is something that you have when you are human. And
It is.
Yeah. And even still the same, what would their belief system be to come here and do these experiments on us because we have a soul? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They would have had a soul at some point in one of their lives too. So is their remembering taken away also, like ours is when we become human?
Yeah, like Plato said, you drink of the waters of what? Of losing your memory. You drink of the waters of forgetfulness.
Forgetfulness,
is
yes.
what Plato said. So when we're born again, we don't remember the previous life.
Mhm. Yeah. So I'm also curious through all of your experiences and contacts with these beings. You seem like a very logical fella. Like you were talking about, I mean, you've been in the Air Force, you do spreadsheets, you're analytical, logical. Did you believe in spiritual gifts before your experiences? Like having and knowing any clairabilities or any intuition? And if not, do you believe in them now?
I had always believed in something. I always knew that there was something greater than myself. There was something greater than dad or mom. There was something that was just greater. I just didn't know what, but I could accept the fact that there was something higher, And that was an epiphany for me because in 1977, I mean, I had these experiences as a child, but they really didn't sink in.
Mm-hmm.
In 1977, I realized that man's not top dog, and I have a very brief story to tell about that because it's so well, I think, gets my point across. And that was when I was aboard this ship. I don't have, like I said, I don't have a clear linear memory of what happened to us. I only have bits and pieces and flashes of what happened inside that ship. But I remember very distinctly. I was standing there inside the ship and I was frozen and I couldn't move. The only thing that I could move, like Calvin Parker, I could move my eyes. I could roll my eyes around and look everywhere, but I couldn't tilt my head back or forward, left or right, or lift a finger. And I saw the little gray guys running around. And I saw this guy that was 6 foot tall. He was twice as tall as the grays. And he walked with an air of authority. I mean, you can kind of tell when somebody is, you know what I mean? They have that persona about them that they're, and this guy was. I mean, he was a crew member on this thing. And I couldn't see him real clear, but I could see him well enough to see that he wore a gray garment with a V-neck, and his skin was not gray at all. His skin was chalkish pink. And he had no discernible ears, just 2 nostrils, a slit for a mouth, and his eyes weren't, huge like you see in the movies, distorted, gigantic, but they were big and they were black. And they were about the size of a pair of wraparound Ray-Bans. And they were just the deepest gloss black. And I'm looking at this guy, straining my eyes to the left as far as I can. As I'm looking at him, he turns and looks at me. And we locked eyes. And in that instant, this was the most frightening thing that happened to me on board this ship that I can remember anyway. And that was that I have no better way to explain it. This guy was in my head. He was in my head. And it was the biggest violation of my privacy I've ever experienced. This guy knew me. He knew my wife. He knew my secrets. He knew my hopes and my dreams, my fears. He knew everything about me. And he just took a copy. And
Of everything.
Of everything. And all I got back from his eyes was just raw intellect. The analogy that I like to use, and it's a good one. When our kids were little, we had an English setter. Very loving, very loyal, good dog. And she would come and put her head in my lap and I would pet her and say, good girl, how you doing? Rub her ears, right? And she looks up at me and she's got those big brown eyes that radiate, loyalty and trust and love. But she knows I'm the alpha. In this equation, she knows that I bring the food and she eats it and we each know our respective roles. And in this equation, when I locked eyes with this thing, I felt like the dog in the equation. I felt like this thing was 500 rungs up the evolutionary ladder from me. I felt so incredibly inadequate in every way, emotionally, intellectually, psychologically, you name it. I was the dog. And that was an epiphany to know that human beings aren't the be all end all. We're not at the top of the food chain.
Mm-hmm.
There are things out there that are much more intelligent than we are, and
Do you believe we're at the bottom of the food chain?
no, not at all. I mean, the universe is full of living things. I mean, my God, I think we're above bread mold, in a petri dish. So, yeah, I can't say
that.
Yeah, so we're not at the bottom by a long shot. The thing we don't know is where do we rank as far as living sentient beings
Mm-hmm.
compared to the other living beings that there are throughout the huge universe that we can't even imagine.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, right? That's part of the answers we're still looking for, and that I don't believe we'll find here in this human experience.
Not in this lifetime.
Mm-mm. Do you believe that after this human experience, we all go to a gathering place of some kind and have some sort of conversation or whatever that looks like about our human experience?
I have never had an NDE, but I had a couple NDE experiencers read my book and
Mm-hmm.
send me an email. And I've got emails from these people saying, don't you see the parallels? Don't you see how the NDE community and the UFO community, specifically the abductee community, have so much in common? And
That's
at first
where
I
I
was,
headed.
yeah, and at first I was like, well, no, not really. But if you think about it, we sure do. I mean, we both come away from this. I know I came away from my 1977 event an absolutely changed human being. I was not the same
Mhm.
person.
Right. How could
yeah.
you? It's a very traumatic experience that you went through. And trauma is trauma. It doesn't matter how big or little or whatever the experience is for someone. If it's traumatic to that person, it's traumatic.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of aftermath that comes from experiences that are traumatic. What are some things that you've done to cope with these experiences that you've had, especially because it's not something that you can just go to a counselor or a friend and talk about?
No, you can't. You can't. Rodney had his struggles, and I admit that I had mine after this experience. And luckily, I credit my wife with being the support system there for me. And even though she didn't and really couldn't understand it all,
Mm-hmm.
she understood me and she supported me, and it made all the difference in the world. I suffer from PTSD, I have no doubt. I was tested in the 1980s and again in the early 1990s for PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always quizzed, well, what kind of trauma have you experienced in your life, and they always suspect child abuse or something like that. And they question you heavily on that. I'm like, no, honestly, no, I never did. But I would never tell them that I saw a UFO, that I've had experience with non-human entities, because I know in the DSM, that they're going to look that up.
Like you.
Yeah, this guy's delusional, right? But I took the test. I took the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, which has been around for 75 years, and it's a very valid test. And both times I came up with the diagnosis of PTSD, etiology unknown. And some of the effects of that, the symptoms that I have is that I can't stand to be out in an open area.
Mm-hmm.
Like and part of that comes from after we saw this thing take off, we were stuck inside this tent and we were too afraid to leave the tent. We were like two scared 10-year-old boys, in this tent. And I opted, I said, let's stay till sunrise. And Toby's like, no, we got to get out of here now. And he was right. We needed to. And, but all I had over my head was a piece of canvas, but I felt like it gave me cover. And I did not want to be in the open and be vulnerable in that 60-foot dart from the tent to the car. So now today, if I'm faced with walking across an open field of any kind of size, I'll walk a mile and a half around it. I will not cut across it.
Yeah.
I sleep with the light on at night. I have to have the curtains drawn. I have to personally check the doors at night. I check the alarm. I had this weird phobia where back when we used to go to malls, remember back then?
Yeah.
We used to go to malls.
Once upon a time.
Yeah. First time this happened was in 1987, but it's happened several times in my life. And we were Christmas shopping, and I walked around a corner, and here was this store that wasn't quite open yet, and they had a display table, and they had mannequins of women, I guess from the waist up, that they were going to dress in blouses or something. But they had no wigs. They had no clothing on. They were nude mannequins from the waist up. And I walked around and I glanced at that and I flipped out. I had a panic attack and I had to get out of there. And grabbed my wife and said, "We're going home. I got to go home. I got to get out of here." And
that's the way that trauma presents itself in little ways. And sometimes you feel like you're healed, or, that you're able to use the tools that you learn to work through those situations, but that isn't always the case. It isn't.
That's a very good point, because no matter how much, we can have coping skills and coping mechanisms, and I think I have good ones and sound ones, but I can't control the reaction. I can't control that bodily reaction.
Right.
And were I to run into the mannequins today, I might have that exact same, I'm recognizing, I know what's going on, but panic attacks are unpleasant. And, thankfully I don't have them very often, one a year maybe.
And it sounds like you have a great support system. The missus sounds wonderful.
She is.
It's a long time to be together and go through these very disturbing experiences. So kudos to her.
Yeah.
Very challenging enough, and then throw that in the mix.
She's a very patient woman.
Before we close the show, I want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to grab your books. How could they do that? And how could they learn more about you and follow you in your future?
Oh, sure. I have a kind of an ill-maintained website. I'm embarrassed. It should be better, but it's not bad. It's got some cool pictures on it and some images. It's at terrylovelace.com. Thank you. And my books are on Amazon. The first one is Incident at Devil's Den, the blue one. And then this is available in an audiobook and in Kindle. And then, of course, in the paperback with the images in the back. And then Devil's Den, The Reckoning is number 2. I feel real fortunate. Both hit number 1 bestseller list on Amazon.
Congratulations. That's wonderful.
Thank you. And this was just out in December, third week in December, 2020. So you don't need to read one to understand the other. You could buy either one. So, and I think you'd enjoy it. I also have a new podcast that I'm trying to get off the ground. It's
great.
It's we don't have a clue what we're doing, but we're making it. And it's called Devil's Den Podcast on YouTube. So
I don't know if anyone ever really does know what they're doing when they get behind a microphone. You just show up and do it.
Yeah, it just kind of happens.
Great. I'm going to have to follow along. I would love to hear more about your experiences and all of those you have to share with you. That's the second book, right? All other people's experiences.
The second book actually answers a lot of unanswered questions from the first book. Okay. That's half of it. And then, because it's almost 380 pages, the last half of it is where I share the experiences from others.
I'm excited they're on Audible. I'm a big fan.
Yes, The Reckoning's not on Audible yet, but I'm working on it. The recording studio was closed down, so I had to wait for it to get over because of COVID, and
Right.
I'm halfway through the book, so a couple weeks I should have an audiobook out.
I think we're all a little behind because of COVID.
Yeah, I lost 2020. I don't know what happened to it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's gone, though. It's gone. Well, Terry, it's been so wonderful having you on the show. I know you're a busy man doing tons of interviews, and I appreciate and I'm in gratitude for the time that you're spending with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I've enjoyed it very much.
I'll be following along with your journey and keeping tabs on you. I think you're a wonderful human being, and I'm just really grateful that you were here. Have a beautiful evening.
I will. Thank you so much.
And everyone that is listening, thank you for being here. I just love Soul Wandering. I learn so much each and every week. It's just great. So thank you for all of the support, all of the love, and a big shout out to my producers. As always, I wouldn't be here doing the show live if it wasn't for them. Y'all have a beautiful night, and we'll see you next week.